Yeah.
Okay, there
We're
goes.
live.
We're
Live
on.
now.
All right, great. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Welcome. Welcome to
Hi.
the movie night discussion. I'm Brad, and with us we have Lucretia, Noe, and Nina, who's going to be helping us host this movie night discussion of Midnight Cowboy for Dustin Hoffman's masterclass. Let's start with everyone, introducing yourselves, saying who you are, how long you've been acting for, and what made you sign up for the class, and yeah, just a quick little short introduction. We'll start with Lucretia because she's on the left side of my screen.
Oh, hi. Hi, my name is Lucretia Sarita Russo, and I'm an actress and a singer. I grew up in a family of performers, and I've been acting since I was, I guess, about 7.5. My first experience was creating my own set from the film The Wizard of Oz out of a loose leaf paper with a little rope that I shook, and I played the witch, and I wrote, sort of rewrote the parts for myself, and that's my beginning. That's it.
Cool. Noe, you were
Yeah.
here for our last chat, so let's do you next.
Hello, I am Noel Torres, and I've been. I don't act much. But what I noticed when I started I mentioned this in the other one, I think. When I started master class, it was mostly for character development in writing, and what I saw is that a lot of um, the way that Dustin Hoffman would talk about acting would match a lot of my attitudes about other things, particularly with art and writing and all that. And then I've kept at it, kept studying, and there's a lot of parallels that I find really useful for the writing. And I haven't gotten the chance to actually, short of practicing with other actor friends or with Nina. Um, I really haven't had a lot of experience, but it's very useful, and I just love analyzing fiction, movies, stories, plays. I just love it. So that's where I am with that so far.
Cool. Welcome, welcome. And then last but not least, Nina.
Oh, okay, great. I'm Nina Charming. Nina Charming is my stage name since I was 13 years old. I studied Royal Shakespeare Company in Sweden, and I started to act Shakespeare when I was 13. So I'm doing Shakespeare for almost 13 years right now. And I did in French, Swedish, and English. And in 2012, I came to United States to learn more about acting. And I went to college in California. It's pretty much interesting to change from Shakespeare to contemporary and musical, and I love musical. To me, I remember the first contemporary musical I did. It was West Side Story. I was Maria, and we were playing in French, and it was very, very interesting for me. And yeah, I did modeling, and I do ballet as a dancing, and I got Dustin Hoffman classes. I found his classes through one of my other friends, and I signed it up. I was so excited. I thought maybe it's a scam or something, but it was real. Dustin Hoffman really was talking,
Oh.
and
Oh.
I think it really helped me a lot as a non-American actress to know the culture, to know how people talk or like act in USA. It helps me a lot, So I'm kind of like learning different things every day. So yeah, that's who am I.
Cool. You said something that made me think. I found you said you studied Shakespeare and that was your start was like the
Yeah,
actual thing. I
yeah.
found I didn't know this, but the Globe Theatre in London, I want to say
Mhm,
in London,
mhm.
they have their
Yeah.
own like sort of Netflix streaming service where you can
Mhm.
stream like their plays online, which is so cool.
Yes.
I had no clue. I just discovered that this weekend, which is awesome.
Yeah,
But
that's really cool. It helps a lot of students, special. I think they create that mostly for students
mhm,
and around the world, because right now technology is a great thing. You can have classes online. I never had acting classes online in my life. I always
mhm,
was on a stage and doing it. But Dustin Hoffman or even Kevin Spacey's class is just wow. Like, wow, is it
Yeah.
acting online? It must be challenging sometimes for recording, but it's so awesome. I love it. It helps me a lot, honestly.
yeah, it's a totally different way of learning. It's crazy.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Um,
I
all
was
right.
totally blown away when I started uh, Dustin's classes because
Hmm.
I'd never seen so much forthcoming from an actor in a way that was just so giving to their students and just really wanting you to feel comfortable and really wanting you to do the best that you can. It just you felt like so real. I've never seen anything like this. It's fantastic.
Hmm.
Well, we're stoked that you guys like it.
Yeah, I love it. I
It's
hope it keeps
incredible.
continue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. So today we're discussing Midnight Cowboy, which stars John Voight and Dustin Hoffman.
Hmm.
I figured we'd start our discussion just talking about general overall review of the film. What did you think of it? What did you think of the story, the themes? And yeah, so what were your guys' thoughts when you were watching it?
I
Sounds like you have a
I had
lot of
so
thoughts.
many thoughts. Oh my God. I was growing up in Hollywood when this film was released,
Mhm.
and the first thing that I thought was that it matched a lot of the stuff that was going on in Hollywood at the time, the parties, the hopes and dreams of newcomers coming in and going through some real difficult um, uh, transitions because of thinking, oh, I'm going to be a star, and realizing just how hard it is to break into the business.
Mhm.
So I really thought it paralleled in so many ways the Hollywood dream. That was my first impression the first time I saw the film.
Yeah, and interesting enough, I
Yeah,
mean, like it wasn't for him. It was definitely wasn't. Like, the story's not about someone trying to be an actor, but
yeah,
he's trying to be something very different. But it was interesting to me, the watching it and seeing him. He had really built it up in his head of what was going to be.
right.
And I think we were talking before we started the screening, and the streaming, and we were saying that it's so many of the storylines could be recreated today in like a regular modern day world, and it was just super interesting to me.
Hmm.
Right. He wanted to be a hustler. That's right.
Yeah,
I
Hustler,
he
yeah.
called himself a hustler, but I mean, I'd
Hustler.
never heard that term before. Used never used like that.
Yeah, true.
What I like about it is that it's in the end he doesn't get his way. It's not about someone who's going out to live their dream and then they have a hard time and eventually things pick up for them. This is very much like a soul crushing, um, just everything he experiences and how he had built up in his head that women in the city love country boys.
Yeah.
So he goes and he does himself up
Oh yeah, that was
like, yeah, like this really exaggerated text and image that he had, calling himself a cowboy and walking around the streets of New York in that way. And then when they show him at home, it's not even that he's from a place that's like that. He's just
yeah.
he created that image,
Hmm.
um, and he tried to live it and found not much success.
We're getting
So
a
and
little pinging sound. Not to, does anybody hear that?
I'm not getting anything.
Okay,
I
maybe
don't
she's
Me
talking.
hear
too.
Yeah,
anything.
You're getting
yeah.
it too,
You do?
Nina?
No, I don't hear anything.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
it's
Um,
little. Okay.
well, I was gonna say what you just said, Noe, about like the image he had of Cowboy. For me, it was like he kept, and he mentioned it a couple times, but it was like John Wayne, like his only, even though he was
John Wayne.
from Texas, and he
Yeah.
was still like his idea of like a cowboy was John Wayne, and even even like you talked about his accent again before we went streaming. You were talking about how his accent, and it took you a second at being from Texas to be like, oh, that's not a Texas accent.
Yeah, it's
But I feel like even part of that kind of fit his character, that maybe he actually had a
yeah,
Texas accent, but he went a little overboard because it was his like
Hello,
the
Christian.
character's
I'm
idea
live.
of what a Texas accent was based off John Wayne's characters from like these old Western films. And so like even
yes.
then like he was he had created this own persona even though he was from the area that he was supposed to be from.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
Yeah.
it's also kind of about, um, being yourself, sort of like in a way that he's trying to be something he's not, because he thinks he's gonna find success in the city as a hustler, and he just, yeah, he doesn't. And one thing I really liked about it is that, is Rizzo's character. He's Because I don't know, I know some. He's definitely one of a kind. I don't think I've ever met anyone like that. But I see people like in my everyday life that are very much like characters. Like, they have their quirks, they have their ticks, and they I don't know. He brought, even though the character, over the top's not the right word, but even though the character is, I don't know, out there, it still felt real.
hmm
Like that is someone who it would exist out there in the world. Even though I personally had never seen anyone like that.
right. And I think and
Yeah.
we'll talk about I think a little bit about like how Dustin played Ratso or Rizzo or whatever three different names he had. But we'll talk about how he played him and how he created this realistic and like vulnerable character, even though he wasn't exactly a likable guy. um, what were your guys' favorite scenes from the film? Or
Um,
just memorable scenes. It doesn't have to be your favorite scene, but like a scene that stood out.
there were so many.
Hmm.
I almost have to go backwards.
hmm
The first scene that comes into my mind, of course, is when uh, Joe, the character, was dressing Rico Razzo in the clothes that he purchased from the store there, and uh, I was very moved by that, just the tenderness of that whole scene. I felt a strong connection when he was looking in the window uh, and saw the sign for the dishwasher, and kind of what was going through his mind in that moment was like, what am I going to go back? Am I going backwards?
hmm
And I could just see that in his face, and I started to feel for him right there. That's just a couple. There's so many, but yeah,
Yeah, the store where he's like looking at the dishwasher. I was thinking to
yeah,
myself,
Hmm.
all in my head, I was like, do it. You have to take the job. You got to do it. Like he's
yeah.
like, I'm gonna pay you. You have a hotel. You know where to live. And I was like, you're not making money. This isn't working out. But the
Yeah,
entire
it's
time I was
not
watching
working
it,
out.
it's not. This isn't what you expected.
Oh,
But the entire time I was watching it, I was thinking that I was like, this guy is just so clueless, and I don't know. That could be very much like what the way that John Voight played it. He did such a good job at I think creating this character who super likable, but had and this goes back to my favorite scene, but like had a very challenging childhood and past life, and we didn't really get the story of what happened to him as a kid. I think it's assumed that his mother abandoned him with his grandmother, who loved him very much and he had a strong connection to, and then I don't know if he had like anger issues as a kid or what, but there's that scene where he like breaks the mirror when he was a kid and his grandma's like trying to hold him back or something. It was like a little short flashes. And I think those were to me the most interesting parts of the movie were when we had those short flashes to his past, either with his grandma or with Annie or um, when he was just being a kid, and those stood out the most to me.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was real powerful for me too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There were
Yeah.
so
I
many.
really like. Yeah, I really like the time that he knew that he had a very, very bad childhood and very, very sad childhood or background, but it was not stopping him from dreaming for the future. It was not stopping him to dreaming go to New York, you know.
Mm-hmm.
That was, to me, was like, wow, you know, that is really good, because we all have bad memories, or we all have like fear of life, and sometimes it stop us from catching our dreams. But for him, it was not. He knew that, but he was like, oh, I'm going for it, you know. That was always, to me, a good sign.
Yeah. Noe, what were your favorite scenes?
I was gonna actually use the same scenes. Well, the first off, the last scene when he and Rizzo are on the bus, um, it's because you kind of know what's coming, you know what's gonna happen,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just sort of.
I didn't.
No,
I knew
I
it
just kind of.
was.
Yeah, I
No
just kind of
clue.
like had.
I thought they were gonna make it. You know?
Yeah, I thought that there was that feeling that yeah, something bad was gonna happen, and but when it does, and Rizzo's dead before before they get to Florida, um, it's kind of a peaceful death. I mean, it just sort of happens, kind of symbolic of Joe's dreams, pretty much. Like, well, his expectations, actually, his illusions. Because it's just in the vein of that. Also, going back to that dishwashing scene, I didn't so much get that he's going backwards because he really hasn't gotten anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he goes to a new place expecting something new, and he just sort of sees that it's the same, that it's not really as different as he thought it was going to be. And
Yeah.
it reminds me
Yeah.
of I used to have this long distance relationship where my ex-girlfriend lived in West Virginia, so we'd fly back and forth to see each other. And me being Hispanic over here from the border in Texas, her friends and family had a certain image of me, I guess, when I went over there, and were kind of surprised that I'm just like a good old American boy over here. And uh, yeah, they expected me, I guess, to like all spicy food and just I don't know. It was definitely different. But what the thing I noticed for the most part is that aside from it's very green up there, the mountains, the trees are huge compared to what we have here in South Texas. Pretty much a desert when you leave the city. But yeah, also same thing when she came down here, she just saw the same. That, yeah, it's not all farms and horses and stuff the way she thought Texas was going to be, and it was very very familiar.
Right. Like what you expect to happen is not what it's going to be out
Yeah.
there. And he saw that
So
like
it
pretty
usually
quickly.
yeah. And it works both ways when you want something new and you don't quite get what you expect, or when you're going to encounter a change that things are going to be different and you're scared about it, and then you move into it and again you realize that it's not as bad as you thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't remember who it was talking about. One of you just mentioned the bus scene, and that I think it was Noe who just talked about like when they were like thought they were gonna get there when Ratso was sitting on the bus and he said he peed himself and he was like all wet. That broke my heart.
yeah.
I was sitting there like this poor guy. Like the entire movie, he was just like struggling. And did they ever say what exactly it was that he was suffering from?
No.
No, they didn't mention it.
No.
Yeah.
They did not mention it.
He was basically just sick, so we don't know what it was, but it was just
Yeah.
like whatever, it was like this disease that was tearing him apart from the inside. And I just like when he said he couldn't even pee his pants, and I was like, oh, I felt so bad for him. And again, I think
they start to laugh.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Joe is like he's so endearing to him, and just making light of it, which helped him, helped Rico to just accept what had just happened to him, and to laugh about it. I just thought that was just amazing writing because that could happen to me, and how a
Mm-hmm.
person, you know, approaches that with you or deals with that was very special, very
Yeah.
special.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that goes right into our next topic, which are characteristics. So what are the characteristics of the main character, Joe, Rico, the rest of them? But there really wasn't that much more outside of them for the most of the film. It was pretty much the two of them. And what were the archetypes that you did see? Did they fit the story? Did they go against any character archetypes? And just what did you feel of their general performances?
Oh,
Well,
I struggled with this. No, go ahead, go ahead.
as far as archetypes, well, I can't really say because the movie's like it's older than me. So as far as anything that is like is progressive for the time, as far as filmmaking goes, I really wouldn't, because it all seemed pretty not normal exactly, but none of it was shocking to me. And what I really liked Joe's, starry-eyed, well, kind of a perversion of the usual Hollywood dream,
Hmm.
as we were saying earlier. Because he does have big dreams, but it's unconventional.
Mm-hmm.
So I like how they kind of, that was kind of a twist on that archetype. And then I found myself kind of questioning a little too often some character traits, like whether or not they fit, like the exaggerated Texan persona. And I had a similar experience when I was watching Creed um, back in November, when I saw that I forget what's it, Pretty Ricky Conlon, the main the person Donnie fights at the end, that he's not all well defined and just he didn't have this bulging chest muscles or super defined physique that a lot of people in sports movies have. But then I also kind of thought that is sort of it doesn't fit, but also thought that if that it's actually even more real because boxers aren't concerned with how they look; they just want to be the better fighter, and
Right.
a lot of the times that doesn't. A lot of the times, skill and technique and strength doesn't equate to like a very aesthetic physique. Um, and sure enough, I did some research afterwards and found out that the actor who played Ricky Conlon is actually a boxer, so that made even more sense. But I had a lot of those moments in Urban Cowboy, thinking like, is this too much, or is it the fact that it's too much that makes it even more real? And yeah, same thing with Ratso. His character is just you can see why he is the way he is, and how the fact that he's different, that he's kind of a scam artist, he's a con man, and that the fact that he is different also with his disabilities, the fact that he's homeless, sorry, um, causes alienation, which kind of feeds into his behavior and reinforces his habits in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think that
Yeah.
I think for for Rico, his I don't know if I would say Rico was as over the top. I think it was like John Voight's character was as Joe was. I think because Joe's like I said, like the accent to me and how naive he was, and it was like how could anyone be like this guy and then go to New York with like he basically went with like $100 and then because he
Yeah.
lost it all in like the first day, like he had no money. So like sometimes I was like wow, that was like but that's part of who he was. So I was like wow, who is this guy, like who would actually do this in real life? But whereas like with Rico, I felt like I could see that guy on the streets of San Francisco or New York, and like he'd just be walking there, and there are people like that who are, they're not just like, yeah, they're not well off, they're homeless, whatever, but they also like have this disability, and for him it was a physical disability, but he was also limited by his illness, which prevented him from doing a lot of things.
Mhm.
But yeah, but I thought he was actually pretty realistic. So, Lucretia, you were going to say something. You said it was tough for you.
Oh, I struggled with both of the characters in the what they call the cutaways, where Rico was dreaming of being, in Florida, and all of the colors changed dramatically for me. There was all this, the white pants and the characters there. I just I kind of went, what just happened? There was one other area that I really struggled with the murder scene. That was very difficult for me because there was a sense of innocence throughout with the character development, and there was kind of an expectation that perhaps maybe he would hit this guy that was coming on to him, and that was kind of expected. But when the phone when he kind of just did it to him, I was like, whoa, that was strong for me in terms of stepping a little outside the character. But everything else, for me, it worked, and for Rico as well, except for with Rico, just the one cutaway where he was surrounded by his thoughts and dreams for a new life. I couldn't quite put it together. So
We're having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, you're breaking up. You said we couldn't quite put together is where we cut out.
I struggled. Oh, the cutaways where they were in Florida, the fantasy, the daydreams that they were having. It was so happy compared to the flashbacks. Some of them were so heavy.
Yeah.
So that's the one area that I struggled with.
So I thought, and you said that the murder at the end, or the attack at the end when Joe attacked the guy.
Yeah.
I thought that fit his character, and I think it fit based on the flashbacks we were getting from his childhood. He was clearly, when he was a kid, he had some anger issues. There was I don't know. We talked about the scene where he broke a mirror or something, and he was screaming, and his grandma was there, and then there was the girlfriend, and they were kidnapped or
raped them both.
Yeah,
raped both.
Yeah.
Of them. It was just so that to me, that just created this character of and I think he repressed those sort of memories, and again we actually don't even know what happened before he was at his grandmother's place. I don't think they ever gave us any flashbacks. He was probably 8 when he got taken to his grandma's, when his mom abandoned him.
Yeah.
So I think for me that sudden outburst of violence really fit in with his inability to cope with with any kind of sort of extreme situation.
That's helpful, because I struggle. I was just trying to fit that in. How did that? So I'm going to kind of watch those areas again. Yeah.
Those were also the hardest scenes for me to watch. I thought they were very graphic, and
graphic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think to me the most interesting scene was the scene that I think Dustin Hoffman talked about it in his class too. That Dustin, they're passing they're in the street and they're walking together, and they're and then the yellow cab will just come in, and then Dustin just hey, we're walking here.
Yeah.
I think that is a great method of acting that everybody can learn, because that can happen to anybody, especially when you film, for example, in the street. Somebody walking to you, especially in New York. New York is busy, it's a crowd and then he was just into his character, and then I saw that, I zoom inside the cab driver, and the cab driver that he was so rude, and he was show a finger to him, and then Dustin was react too. I think that is really interesting for me too, to see it oh wow, and maybe that was not part of the scene, but that's really happened, and he was so cool with it, and both of them were so comfortable. I think because accident will happen on a stage or in front of the camera, and it's so good that people actors special to react very comfortably and calm and relaxed, that they don't like just panic. Oh, what's going on here? The cab. Oh, what should I do? I love that. I really enjoy that scene.
Yeah. What what I liked about that scene was like Dustin was like, "We're walking here, we're walking," and he's like screaming and
Yeah.
shouting. But then John Voight was in character the whole time too, like this like really naive guy. He looked so
Yeah.
confused. He was like whatever, and I was like, I mean, I feel like Dustin gets a lot of credit for that scene, but like John Voight was totally perfect too.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
As well, when he hit the cab and that strength came through,
Yeah.
I could just feel that he had so much power, and I was thinking in my mind, the character is really interesting, and I want to see more of this Rico guy. I mean, he just caught me right there. He was so real of his character.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. The one thing about that scene is that, like, since Ratso is kind of a squirrely, ratty guy, and just sort of, you don't see, he seems real bold in the way that he has to live, but still timid. And when he explodes there in that scene, it adds another dimension to him. That it may have been out of necessity, but it just kind of brings to mind just like having a good team in any production. It reminds me of I mean, I wasn't there for the discussion of The Graduate. I know you and Brad had mentioned that it was one of the earlier ones, but in The Graduate, there's a scene where he grabs Anne Bancroft's breast, and then the first time they meet in a hotel, and I had read that. Oh, does he? I don't know if he mentions it in the master class.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, he does.
He does.
Where it's out of
when he's banging his head against the back of the wall.
Yeah.
And that she just kind of stayed in character and didn't react as being, an experienced and older woman that wasn't shocked by it, and it just also feeds back to what Brad was saying about how John Voight reacted. So it's the collaborative effort that when something happens, it's not scripted. When it just happens, that it's important just to go with it, because you never know what you might get from it.
Yeah, I think it's like Nina said, it's basically a testament to the performance. Like a good performer will, they will react the way that their character would react. They'd react naturally. So they allow it to, not take over the scene or not change how they're in the moment and keep going. And I think, like, let's say you're on stage or you're doing a play and like something happens in the audience, and let's say it's like not life-threatening, obviously, but something happens to the audience, and you can't stop and be like, hey, be quiet. Although there's that like, I don't know who it was that yelled at someone for using a cell phone, like in the middle of the play. I can't remember who that was, but that was like really recently.
Neil Patrick Harris.
Was it Neil Patrick Harris?
There was.
Yeah.
It might have been because something happened.
Something like that.
About a year ago. Oh no, actually, it was. It did happen with Neil Patrick Harris, but that was actually part of the show, and I think it was actually Kevin Spacey. I'm not sure.
I remember Kevin Spacey class. He was talking about there was a blind gentleman with the dog was on a Broadway,
right?
And the dog was like kind of like acting like, oh, there is a cat on a stage, which the character was a cat. So they kick him out, and then a few weeks after they realize, oh, that guy was blind, and that sound was the sound of his dog, because his dog realized there's a cat on the stage. Which I think is great. That means you did your character great. That's I think, wow,
a compliment, the highest compliment.
Right. That you can play something so well that even animals feel it. Yeah.
It reminds me when exactly.
But it's like the idea that
it reminds me when I play Othello. Oh, go ahead.
It's just the idea that something happens.
Like when I play Othello, I was a boy, and then when we play Othello, I supposed to be a boy, a character of a man, and then we did makeup. I even shaved my hair and then body, everything. and Queen Elizabeth was on that theater. It was in UK, and she was asking who was that boy, and I was feel so good and bad at the same time because I feel mad. I'm not a boy. I'm a girl. Like, oh, I did my character.
That's
I did my
great.
character that much good that she thought I'm a boy. So she was like, oh, he did a good job. And I'm like, who is he? It's me. I'm a female. What are you talking about? And when the director told me, I was like, oh my gosh, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so good.
Right.
Like when you get those senses from people, sometimes it makes me mad, but I'm like, maybe I can use it. So it's so cool. I really enjoy it when those kind of accidents happen. I can prove myself, hey, I can do it.
It's a chance to
Yeah,
show that you are the actor. You are the
exactly.
character you're playing.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're like, oh, I did it. Thank you. It feels really good. Yeah. Yeah, correct.
Those experiences are so powerful when you first have something like that happen to you in a performance,
Hmm.
because you're there. And I won't go into detail about something that happened to me, but it was very powerful, possibly one of the most embarrassing things that could happen, let's just say, to a woman on stage in front of an audience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you learn real quick, to knock into it, and just once again, kind of going back to that scene where Rico had met himself, and just moving through that. Uh, that's it. That's it.
Yeah,
Totally.
true. Cool.
So a couple of the other questions we have in our discussions, I think we kind of covered all of the performance stuff just in that discussion. We went back and forth, but we talked
Yeah.
about Dustin creating Rico in a vulnerable way. Um, Maybe we could talk a little bit more about that. How did you feel about Dustin's portrayal of Rico in particular? How did he make you feel for that character when he was a little? We've kind of touched on it a couple times, but just like a more detailed answer, like what made you like him?
Oh gosh, so
Wow.
many things.
So
Opening
many.
his home such as it was, and having that respect for his home, and um, it was, this is my house, and I invited you here, and that made me like him. The uh, scene, there was the one cutaway where he began to um, drift back, where the women started to come at him as he was coming out of the daydream, and
Hmm.
I saw that the character almost go back into a place where they realized, I'm not going to make it to Florida.
Mhm.
Um, I just connected to that sense of failure, and it made me like him because I could just see the dimension in his character and what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I think
And I
also.
like the part that when he start to cook for him in his house, in his homeless house, he steal the food and he start to cook for
Yeah,
him, and he's like, hey, you should eat, you really should eat. I think that was
yeah,
is
yeah,
showing a kind heart because he's homeless, he doesn't have a money, he's living in a worst place ever, but he's like cooking in that little oven and then make sure he's eating, and he even gave it to him all of the food, and like, wow, you see, it's
yeah.
just it's too much.
Mhm.
That was
Yeah.
awesome.
I
Really
think for
special.
me too, it was also I think the fantasy sequence of him being in Florida. I thought
Hmm.
that gave him like another like layer of his character, which was that and the way that Dustin played it in that scene too. He's like joyful, he's walking normally, and it's like this isn't just he doesn't want to just go to Miami and sit in the sunlight when he wants that too, but he wants to be in Miami because he thinks he'll be appreciated there, and it gives you the sense of like this character is feels very lost and forgotten in New York, and
Mhm.
it's so easy to be forgotten in this giant city with all these other people. But in this scene, in his fantasy in Miami, he can make it down there and he can do it. And he saw Joe as his his pathway down there and his friend to do it with, and it made me feel like this guy's probably never had a friend before. He's never had anyone close to him that
Yeah.
he's been able to he's never been able to connect with someone where he can think about that, think about how he can get out of New York and do something different with his life. And that was like
I
the first.
agree.
I
Yeah,
feel like Joe was probably the first time that happened to him.
Now that I
totally related to that.
So true.
now that there's was it just kind of dawned on me that going back to what Brad had said earlier about that you've never heard the word hustler used in the context in which Joe uses it, right? And
Yeah.
that I was going somewhere with this. Oh yeah. So he wants to go to New York City and be a hustler and live that kind of life. And when you think about the relationship that he has with Rizzo, it's sort of Rizzo is the reality of what it means to have to live that life. Like, it's like, okay, you want to be a hustler. Well, this is what it's like to be a hustler. This is the life. This is a reality of the life that you want to live. And then, and at the end, when they do end up going to Florida, it kind of feeds back into that whole when Rizzo dies, he kind of brings him full circle because the way that Joe had romanticized what that life meant was dead at that point. It died with Rizzo.
Yeah.
When he fell down the stairs too, I was like,
oh my God, yeah.
All the way down
my.
the stairs, and he gets up and he says, "No, go." And you're thinking, gosh, he's broke. He had to have broken something, but he's like, "No, go. This is your opportunity." I was like, yeah, that made me like him. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So we have 15 minutes left in our conversation. Went by really quickly. And I wanted to talk, my last point was about the award recognition that Midnight Cowboy received. And I was doing like a little research, and we talked about this again before the streaming, but it's the only X-rated film to have won an Academy Award for like Best Picture and Best Director and Best Screenplay. But it's one of only 3 to ever be nominated. And it did get nominated for a couple of the acting awards, but it didn't win any. So I think it'd be, in considering that this was a very character-driven story and film, I want to know what you guys thought about these performances, and had we had different actors or different, even if they made different choices with their performances, how would it have affected the film, and do you think it would have received the same number of accolades if Jon Voight and Dustin Hoffman weren't in it, or played it differently?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah,
that's
a really
all these
tough
different
one.
actors playing these different roles.
Yeah.
I could see Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in that, maybe together.
Yeah.
And I love all of them. Don't get me wrong, but I can see like Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. They can be a great match for that too. Yeah, but I mean, I never had a problem with the acting about this movie.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was wonderful. It just sometimes I wish they could show us more about his childhood and his background, because I watched this movie 4 times and then I realized, oh, that happened. Okay, they raped him, they raped his girlfriend, and his girlfriend went to the like mental hospital and all those after 4 times. And I'm like, I wish they could show us more what exactly happened to him, that it brought him to this point that he wants to leave his home and come to New York and start from zero with nothing, with maybe $100. That's what I wish he was more into it. But acting, I think, was great.
It left almost too much to the imagination in that particular area. I agree. I wanted to see more there too.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine any other actors. I'm trying desperately, but I just think that it was perfectly cast. That these,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in a lot. I mean, in any case, if you cast a different actor in a role, there's going to be it's not going to be the same. It's
Yeah, it's gonna be different.
yeah, but I think in
Yeah.
this
It's gonna
case
be
in
different.
particular, actually particularly with Dustin Hoffman's performance, is that um, if they got anyone else, I mean, if we throw in names like Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, they would have definitely brought something else to the role, and it would have been great in its own right. But nowhere, it would be completely alien compared to
Yeah.
Dustin Hoffman's
Because
performance.
the actors were
Yeah.
so unique
Yeah.
in their own personal personalities.
Mhm.
So it's hard to imagine different actors playing those roles. But I agree. Yeah.
Mhm.
Cool. All right. Do you guys have any final thoughts that you want to share before we go about the film or about the performances?
Um,
I really want to see a new version of this.
Yeah, like a remake.
I was just going to say
Yeah,
the
yeah,
same
like a
thing.
remake. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a
Yeah.
remake of this would be excellent. Yeah.
I think like the subject matter of it is pretty universal and
True.
timeless. Or at least it's well, just to say that it's the subject matter is just as relevant, and the setting is also very familiar to moviegoers.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean it's a very
Yeah.
well made film. It wasn't just well acted; it was uniquely acted,
Yeah.
and yeah, just the way it plays with some of those traditional storytelling tropes. Um, it's just that in a way that could have been it could have easily been a bad picture.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it had the
Yeah.
makings of a B, a B, one of those
Yes.
old like B movies that were made that were just
Yeah.
like really over the top. I mean, it could have been like extremely graphic, or like, it was graphic, but it could have been like more graphic, or more violent, or more sexual, more nudity. It could have been like this very like over the top, like in your face, raunchy film. And the way that they did it, it still had, it still was graphic, and it still was a little bit like cheesy, but it was meant to be, and they did it in a way that made it, um, classic.
It's one of those things that's kind of
Yeah.
revealed throughout the film is that everything that seems off is deliberate.
Yeah.
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 I think I would have jumped in to recut the daydreaming scenes. I felt that maybe there was some rushing there. There was so much, like you could tell, that had been shot, and that particular parts of the scene, I just felt that there was more that could have been done there. That's the only area of the film, personally, that I felt could have perhaps been recut. And you know what? They probably could recut it, because they do recut so many things now. Just,
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah.
Cool. Well,
I
thank
watch
you
a
all
lot of.
for.
Oh, are we going? Okay.
Yeah, I was
I was
just
gonna,
say thank you all
yeah.
so much for joining the conversation
Thank
and
you.
helping
All right.
host the
Thank
movie
you.
night. Yeah, I hope you
Yeah.
guys enjoyed it, and I
Thank
hope
you.
everyone else will enjoy it. This will be available to be viewing anytime. It's going to be on YouTube, so show it
Awesome.
whenever.
Perfect.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Nice
you.
working with you, Nina. No.